sourdough naan, and we are going to fill it with some crispy pork belly that we have right now searing off in the, or crisping up in the oven. We're going to baste it here in a little bit. And a carrot apple slaw, as well as arugula and a kind of a citrus herb chimichurri sauce to go over it. So it's kind of inspired by a dish we had at Dollywood during their Harvest Festival. And so I'm trying to recreate it here. But let's start off with our naan, and we'll get that going. We are going to use, I'm going to make a big batch of this so we have a good kind of pocket for it. So I need about 2 cups of our sourdough discard for this. So we're going to have to steal from both of my starters here. Okay, we've got a good little from this guy. I've got to kind of replenish it because I gave some starter away to a friend yesterday. And so I want, got to kind of pump it back up a little bit to get where I have copious amounts of it. I'm the one who always likes to have more than enough starter. I know so many people are like, you only need this teeny tiny amount. And I'm like, you need more. Always more, because you make mistakes, and it's just nice to have a good amount. I'm gonna do a little extra dollop in here for it. And then, look at those, I do have 2 loaves proofing up in our thing, so I think we'll break up 1 at lunch tomorrow. But we need 2 cups of sourdough discard because we're going to make kind of a double batch of our naan. And so this is a great recipe if you need to get rid of discard. And then we're going to do a whole cup of yogurt. You can use sour cream if you don't have yogurt in here. Yogurt is going to give it a slightly better texture to it. Don't use a Greek yogurt. Use a nice kind of either, this is an Indian yogurt, but you can use a just a regular kind of a whole milk yogurt for it. It's really delicious. So we're going to use a whole cup of this in here, because again, we're doing a big batch. But if you don't have it, sour cream works great. Because most of the time I don't have yogurt, because I don't eat yogurt, and you have to use plain yogurt. Don't use like a vanilla yogurt, or that would not be a very good naan. Okay, we've got our yogurt in here. We are going to add in, so it's 180 milliliters of water, which is like roughly 3/4 of a cup of water. I just do it by tablespoons, and my normal recipe requires 6 tablespoons. I doubled it to 12, and a tablespoon has 15 milliliters in it. And then we're gonna add in a 1/2 cup of oil, of olive oil in here, because we don't use any oil or whatnot when we're cooking up the naan. We kind of toast it up on a hot skillet. And we're gonna whip up our batter for this or our dough, because it needs to sit and the flour hydrate for 5 to 10 minutes before we start cooking up our naan, because that allows it to be a little bit more like elastic and smoother. Okay, we're gonna get these wet ingredients kind of mixed together here, and then we're gonna add in our salt, our baking powder, our baking soda, and then lastly our flour, and then we'll knead this up. But a really simple but delicious. Once you've made it homemade, you really can't go back to store-bought, because it is so much better. And it's not too much work.
I have a question. What kind of mixer is that?
So this is a Danish whisk, or a dough whisk for it. It's essentially, you've got your little wire through, and it allows the mixture to pass through it. It's really great for once we add that flour in, because it's going to allow it to pass through and incorporate better than instead of bulking up on the spoon basin, if you wish it. I'm going to turn on my skillet, which we will be cooking these on, over a 4, and that way it can heat up and get nice and hot, because that is the thing that takes the longest when we're making thing is heating up your skillet, because you want it to be nice and hot for it to cook. We are going to use 4 teaspoons of baking powder. So 1, 2, 4, and then 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And then a tablespoon of salt. And again, this is gonna be for a big batch, a double batch of our naan, which I like to do when we are using it as like our main kind of dish part. We're gonna whisk those in. Once we get those mixed in, our batter is gonna get really, really fluffy because the baking soda and the baking powder are going to interact with that sourdough discard and the yogurt, which will make it just, again, a really fluffy batter. And then we'll add in our flour. So you can see it's already growing in size. And just make sure you've got all those kind of big clumps mixed up. And then we'll add in our flour. This allows it to get mixed up a little bit more evenly. And now we're gonna add in our flour. All-purpose flour works well. You can also use bread flour. They both work perfect for this recipe. So you don't need one or the other. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We're going there. We might need a little bit more when we mix it or up. You want your dough to be kind of with a slight tack, but it shouldn't stick to your hands when we get to the kneading part. We're gonna mix it with our dough whisk here until we have kind of a dry shag forming, and then we'll flip it out on the counter and knead it together. There we go. So I'm gonna pull off all this on here, and then we're good with this. And we're gonna flip this out onto our counter, and it'll be dry right now, but by the time we have it all together, it's going to be one good mix. And we're just gonna knead it together. You don't have to do it like a press and fold, we're gonna work it until it's combined into one big mound. And just any of those little dry crumbs, just keep folding them back in. They'll incorporate them. And then you just want to give it a good knead for about a minute or 2. We will let it sit and that flour hydrate from that water and the yogurt and the discard. And then we will, after it sits for a little bit and the hydrates, we'll knead it again before we shape up our little naan kind of pancake type things. Don't think we'll need any added flour. It looks like we've got a perfect amount. So just knead it. It will be a slight wet stick to it, but it's not too difficult to manage. If it's sticking up to your hands too much, just add again a little bit more flour. I always say this is your arm workout for the day. Get your knead in. It's a pretty malleable dough though. Okay. I'll get our work. And then just kind of shape it into your ball. And we're gonna let it sit there and hydrate.
Can you explain what naan is?
Naan is, the best way I like to say it is like a really fat, fluffy, soft tortilla. You know, I find it's much more like pita. Some types of pita are similar to it, but some types of pita is more dried out and has a big pocket inside, where this is gonna be like one cohesive kind of fat tortilla, but it's really soft and fluffy like a bread inside, and it's delicious. We'll roll it out, we'll cook it on here, and flip it up both sides and coat it with some butter. Okay, let's get our glaze working on here that will baste our pork belly in and then pop it back in there. We are going to do kind of a mixture. I'm gonna put a little bit of apple cider vinegar, some fresh lemon or freshly squeezed orange juice, and some brown sugar. We're gonna heat it up, a little bit of butter, and that's gonna be our glaze to go over our pork belly.
Do you fry the naan?
You toast it up on a hot skillet. So the oil is already in the batter or in the dough, and then you just hot skillet, no extra fat, and then you rub like room temperature butter on it at the end. I'm gonna squeeze our 2 little like clementines in here. You could also use apple juice if you have apple juice for this. I'm using apple cider vinegar and then orange juice because there'll be a nice little citrus kick to it. And then we're gonna put in some brown sugar, and then we're gonna heat it until it's kind of dissolved. And then we'll brush it over our pork belly that we have toasting up in the oven right now at 425. Pork belly takes like a hot minute to cook. It takes about an hour, so I had it in there already so we can go. But you wanna baste it throughout to keep it nice and flavorful. This will give our kind of sticky glaze on the top of it. My back burner on, and the apple cider vinegar that we added in here will give it a little bit of a, you know, a tang to it as well, so it's just not overpowering sweet, because you don't want your, you know, to be too sweet on there. So we're gonna do just about a half a cup of brown sugar, but we have a big piece of pork belly, so we'll see that in just a second. And then I'm going to put a little bit of liquid smoke in here as well, because I want it to have kind of a smoky barbecue kind of flavor to it. So we're going to put in just about a half a teaspoon of liquid smoke. I'm going to get a spoon here and we'll stir this up. And this will kind of be our little mixture for our, go over the top of our pork belly. So we're just gonna heat it until that brown sugar kind of dissolves. We don't need to cook it for too long where we have it into a full glaze here, because it will be in that hot oven. So we don't need that too hot. And I think I might also do, I'm gonna do like a little pinch of salt. I already, when I take the pork belly out, I'll kind of explain exactly how we prepped it, but it's already been salted and peppered a little bit, so I'm just gonna add a little bit more. Just add a little garlic salt, because you know, garlic salt is the best. About like a 1/4 of a teaspoon. Okay, while that's getting kind of prepped up, let's get our carrot ribbons, or our carrot kind of peeled, and then we'll get them in for our slaw. So we're gonna do a apple, carrot, and arugula slaw that will top on top. So we'll have our naan, and we'll have our crispy pork belly, and then we're gonna have this delicious slaw, and then I'm gonna make a citrus herb chimichurri sauce on top of that. So just some really great flavors that will kind of pair with the pork belly. I'm gonna start with 2 of these carrots because they're really fat. I'm gonna take the whole outer bit, and then we are going to make carrot ribbons that we will just kind of dice up so that they're not super thick. You could grate your carrots, but or shred them, but I find that makes them just a little bit too firm. So I wanna do my ribbons and then kind of give a slight chop so that you don't have super long ribbons. And you just use your peeler and you'll just go over your carrot. You just want to take that outside. But it's going to give you just this really thin, delicate carrot strip, which I think is really perfect because it marinates really fast, and you know, our slaw, and will just be lovely. And you can see, that's why I said, I'm just going to do 2 for right now, because 1 carrot is going to give you a lot of ribbons. all lined up. Now I'm going to use arugula in there because I like the lemon pepper kind of flavor for it, and it's a little bit more delicate than cabbage, but you could always sub out the arugula for cabbage. Okay, it looks like we've got ours on a nice little boil here. Beautiful. It looks like it feels like it's all dissolved. So let's take a pause on this. Let's get our pork belly out because we're going to do this a couple of times on there. You want to kind of crisp it up with the pork belly so it needs to cook for a while with that skin side up. And so here is our beautiful pork belly. And just be careful because we do have that kind of bacon grease on there. And we're going to use a little bit, we're going to baste it with that bacon grease as well, which is going to keep our pork belly nice and kind of hydrated, but we're getting this nice kind of crispy edge on top, as you can see. So with the pork belly, this is a huge one that we got from Costco that is actually, this is only a third of it, but it is large. And what you're going to do is you score it all the way through, so kind of crisscross with a pretty sharp knife. You don't cut all the way through where you get through the fat. This helps that fat really render down. Then you're going to pat everything dry with like a paper towel until it's all dried out. And then I salt and peppered it all the way around to make sure, you know, it has that nice flavor in it. I'm gonna first start with this bacon or the pork belly grease and then kind of dab it all over. This is gonna help just keep it nice and crispy. And we'll baste it up. There we go. And then I'm gonna grab a little knife and score it just a little bit more on some of these middle ones. That scoring again, really, it's gonna be hot, but we're gonna get it just those little things so they pop up nicely. I will say, pork belly, if you've never worked with it, it is kind of tricky to score, especially when you get to really fat parts like that. So I'm just gonna give it a little extra help. But it's really important to score it, especially if you're gonna leave it whole like this, because it allows that fat to render down. Do you see how we already got some nice crispy pieces up, and we're still gonna be baking this for a good, you know, little more time. Okay, now that we kind of dripped that pork belly grease over, we're gonna take our little bit of our glaze here that we made, and we're just gonna dribble it over. This is gonna help kind of make this really nice kind of sticky candied coating on it, as well as a nice flavor. The vinegar in here will help break down that fat as well. And we're gonna do this a couple of times throughout, again, just to bring that flavor in there and kind of coat it up nicely. Okay, and then I gotta remember that this is hot and not to pick it up with my hands. Okay, let's get this back in there. Put it on there, but it is looking delicious. I feel like pork belly is one of those foods that everybody's had, but I feel like a lot of people are wary about cooking it. It's not as difficult as you see. It just takes a little bit longer than you think. Now you can always cut it down into strips, which means it will cook up faster because it's not as thick for it. But it's nice. It's a little bit easier to just pop it in like that and cook it and it can cook for a while. Like an hour is kind of the minimum time that you need, but you can also cook it in like 2 parts at one temperature and then bring the temperature down. So you could start at 425 and then bring it down to 350 for a longer, slower cook on it.
A question, are you ready for Christmas and do you have your tree yet?
We have our tree and it was, well, I'll say it is decorated, although it is a daily battle with Jack because he really enjoys pulling the ornaments off. And I have these like wooden bead strings that go around my tree because I kind of a very natural like Scandinavian theme with it. So we have a lot of like natural ornaments and felt ornaments or knit ornaments. We have these wooden beads and he just loves to pull them. And He's pulled them off a couple of times, so they're constant put on. But we have strategically over the years, I have learned that breakable ornaments are not your friend, because no matter how high you put them, they always fall, break. Jack broke one already today. He brought one and shattered it. Luckily, he knew he had done wrong, so he quickly ushered away from the broken mess before he could get hurt with it. But I was like, how did he get it? And he's a crafty kid. He'll move furniture to get what he wants.
You have a question. Is the meat actually labeled as pork belly in the store?
Yes, it is labeled as pork belly. And there, so Costco is where I get it. I cannot really find it anywhere else from Costco. Now, I'm sure that different times of the year, like our grocery store might carry it, but Costco is the only place I can carry it. And the one problem that I think is hesitant is when you buy it from Costco, it is literally this big. It's huge, so it's not something that you can really eat at one time. So I have it already like cut in 2 more servings and frozen down so that we can make something with it at another time, because I feel like I could not eat that much pork belly in a week, although it'd probably be pretty delicious. So that's like the one thing. Now I'm sure maybe bougier ones you might be able to buy smaller ones. It's kind of similar to brisket. It's kind of hard to find brisket in those smaller pieces. All right, here's our beautiful carrot ribbons. I just gave them a simple chop through so that we didn't have any super long ones. I think 2 carrots are gonna do well for this. And then we're gonna slice up our apples, and we're gonna kind of do them nice and thin. And then we're gonna make a chimichurri sauce as well. We'll get our slaw together. And so I've got 2 Granny Smith apples here, which is perfect because yesterday, I whipped up a bunch of, I had made like little mini pot pies for my friend, and then she was like, you don't happen to have stuff to make an apple crisp for us? Which I did. There's a little video on there so you can see we made 12 mini chicken pot pies for her like family that was coming into town, and then I made an apple crisp and I baked up a sourdough loaf for her. But she was like, you don't happen to have it, because I made it for a meal for her family, like when her partner died, and I cooked like the whole kind of family meal for them the day before the service. And I made apple crisp because it was one of their favorites, and I made this huge batch. And so anytime she can get it, she's like, can you make it for me? So I used up a bunch of my apples because I always like to have apples on hand, but luckily I had some left over for this.
You have a question. Who did the crimping? It looked like it was professionally done.
Oh, the crimping professionally done. There were a few that were expertly crimped, like 4. But, my husband helped me out on the crimping because I have this issue where I think I'm going to be done with something at a certain time, and I never make it. My daughter tells me I have time blindness, and it only comes to food. I'm always like, it'll only take me this long to make it, and it's always like 30 minutes longer than I predicted. So we were coming down to the wire because, she was coming to pick them up, and I was like, I need help. So I didn't trust my husband to do anything but the crimping with the fork, but he did an excellent job. They were fantastically crimped on there. I rolled out, made the lattices, and then he trimmed it, and then he crimped around. So he gets credit for that. I'll give him credit. I will say, so far, he must have learned stuff from me, watching me this last year, because he was an excellent sous chef with my twice baked potatoes when I needed him, when we whipped up 25 of those. And he has definitely improved his cooking skills. I mean, it was kind of hard not to improve them from where he was at, but he did a great job. Let's see, he's learning through osmosis. Okay, I'm gonna chop them a little bit finer than this because I don't want to have super big apple chunks on it. I don't even know if I'm gonna use my second one because, again, this is a lot of apple, and I don't want too much apple flavor to pop over into it, but enough to give you that nice kind of little harvesty flavor to it. because this is something we had again. It was over fall break, and we went to Dollywood in the beginning of October, and they had this food festival going on, and it was so delicious. So we're just gonna mince it up so we have just nice little chunks of apple popping throughout. There we go. Which is funny because I think I feel like I just don't even try it as much, but I'm not a huge fan of like fruit and like fresh fruit with savory foods, but I've been making myself branch out more, and I have found that I have been enjoying it more and more, and I've been liking it. I just don't want it to be over too much of it. So again, here we've got this nice little minced up apple bit to it. I'm gonna add this into. And again, I don't want it super big chunks as well because you're going to be eating this with the pork belly in the naan, so you don't want it to be too overbearing. So we have that. And then let me check on our naan because we can start rolling those out and getting them, and we'll finish up this salad as well. But it's already looking pretty good. So I'm going to give it again a couple kneads. It's this is our sourdough discard naan that uses this one because we made a double of our batch of it. It has 2 cups of discard in it.
Oh, what are you looking for to know that it's ready?
It's kind of like, do you see how you poke it and you're not like breaking it apart and it bounces back up? It just is a nice like elasticy feeling to it. When you first knead it up, every time you kind of work with it, it tears apart and it breaks apart with it. But once that dough has hydrated, and really if you wait like 10 minutes, you're good. It's going to be ready. But you can just see how much smoother it is now than it was when I was working with it earlier. It doesn't break apart as much. You have just a lot more elasticity in it. And that's just going to allow you to roll it out thinner without it breaking apart. The end-all flavor, I mean, it's not going to change much of that flavor, but it's just going to make it, the texture, a little bit nicer. So we'll do our little thing, and then since I did a double batch, I'm gonna cut this up. And I think I'm gonna do 6 really big ones because it makes it easier.
Does it have yeast?
No yeast. This is just sourdough discard, and then the leavening agent is actually baking powder and baking soda. So that's what's gonna give it its pop. And then, of course, there's a whole cup of yogurt in here as well. So I'm going to start by kind of breaking this first part out. And then you're going to roll it down thin, not as thin as a tortilla, but you're going to roll it out, and then we'll cook it up on our skillet that we have heating up right here. You don't want your skillet too hot, as in like high heat, but you want it warmed up. And the longer each one of these sit, the nicer they'll roll out. But since we have a good amount, I'm going to get them started on here. And you don't want them too thick or it will take a lot longer to cook up. And ideally, if you're really great at rolling them out, you'll roll this perfect little circle. But with me, and my tortillas are never circles. My naan are never circles. They're more like squares or rectangles or just blobs. It's the same thing like with rolling out pie crust. I can never roll a perfect circle. You know, they'll put it out there and I'm like, I don't know how you do it. I start with a circle, but I think I just pushed too hard in one direction. So I'm rolling it out as big as I can, because when I pick it up to move it on here, it is going to shrink in about 1 inch everywhere. It will just retract. So make it bigger than you think and you'll end up with the size you want. And again, we're gonna be eating, this is gonna be like a naan, like a sandwich on here. So we'll have it start toasting up on there, and let it start to kind of cook. We'll flip it over. And you kind of know when it's ready to kind of flip over. You can always take a peek, but it takes about 2 or so minutes. You'll start to see it puff up a little teeny tiny bit, just rise up a little, and that's when you're gonna know it's gonna be ready to flip. Okay, let's get a good serving of arugula in here. Again, you could also use cabbage if you want, or Brussels sprouts or broccoli slaw. Arugula has a nice kind of a lemony pepper flavor to it, which I think is going to bring some nice flavors in here. So I'm going to put in a big kind of handful in here, because this is going to be kind of our little veggie salad that we put in with the pork belly, and kind of the acidity of that flavors are going to cut through the richness of that pork belly. And then let's make our little slaw. Oh, I'm sorry, Brittany. Now I'm not going to make my slaw sauce too sweet, because again, I am not a super sweet with my savory, and we are going to have that kind of glaze on the pork belly, but I will put a little bit of sugar in it because a coleslaw needs a sugar. Since we have a smaller amount here, I'm going to just do about a half a cup or so of mayo. Then I'm going to use apple cider vinegar to kind of play on the apples in here. We're going to do about a tablespoon of this, so it's about 3 capfuls. So 1, 2. You could also use, red wine vinegar, white wine vinegar, regular vinegar. That's a little bit more tart. And then you could do a balsamic vinaigrette, but that's going to turn your base like a brownish color, but it still tastes good. And then we're going to put in about a tablespoon of sugar, so maybe a pinch more. Again, I do a lot less sugar in here than what most people put in their coleslaw. We'll mix it up. And I'll give it a good taste. We'll add a little bit of pepper on here, and then maybe a pinch of garlic salt. But I'll get that in a second. But let me look over here at our naan. You can see we've got our edges bubbling up over here, which means we should be pretty close to flipping over. Yep. And that's when you know is when you've got these little, almost like a tortilla, and you kind of puff up. The first side down looks dry or cracked. The second one, because it's already puffed up, has a much smoother surface on it. So I always say that's the pretty side surface, the one you serve looking out for everyone. Perfect. Let's add a little pinch of black pepper. About a fourth of a teaspoon, and then like a fourth a teaspoon of garlic salt. Not much, because mayo already is pretty salty. There we go. And then we're going to kind of coat up our arugula, carrots, and apples with that. Again, we only put a little bit of salt. That the apples we use will add a bit more sweetness to it. Kind of coat it up. And then as it sits, the carrots will let out a little liquid, and the apples will, and it will just get a little less thick. And then we're going to make a really delicious kind of citrus herb chimichurri sauce that will kind of drizzle over everything as well. So you're going to get a lot of pop of flavor. So here is our kind of our carrot and arugula and apple slaw that we will serve in our little naan pocket. Let's check this guy out. The second side always cooks a lot faster. And as you see, this is where I was talking about how you're going to have a slightly nicer kind of bubble format on it, a little bit smoother. And we're going to rub it. Once you get it out, you're going to take room temperature butter, and you're going to rub it over the top. This is going to help keep it nice and flexible, so that when you stuff it, you can bend it and kind of eat it like a really fat taco. Okay, let's get this next guy rolled out. And I will say, the longer they sit, the easier they roll out, because that flour has hydrated more. And you don't need to add any extra flour, because your dough should be fairly, malleable, not super sticky that it sticks to your counter, but wet enough that it still has good hydration. There we go. So I've got it nice and big, but again, remember it's going to shrink in just a little bit when we put it on our skillet. Beautiful. So nice warm skillet. I'm going to turn it down to about a 3 in there, and it's going to puff up when it cooks, and that's when we'll know. We'll know because you'll see the outsides of it start to rise up. So we rolled it out thin, but it gets thicker, which makes it just beautiful and delicious. Let's grab our pork belly out. We're going to do another round of our basting on there with our little kind of citrus brown sugar glaze. And it is looking pretty fantastic. Beautiful. And again, be very careful because this, as you can see, that tray is nice and hot and sizzling with that grease. It will hurt if you spill it on you. So always be careful. You can do it in a roasting dish if you want to. And as you can see, anywhere that sugar or whatnot fell down below, it kind of caramelizes onto the tray. First, we're gonna go through with the bacon or the pork belly grease. And we're gonna dab some up on here. This helps keep it nice and crispy, and again, great flavor. Dabble this up here. Make this again nice and crispy. Essentially, you're basting it back over, and then we're going to go back over with our little glaze here. So if you weren't here in the beginning, this has juice from 2 clementines, about a tablespoon or so of apple cider vinegar, and a half a cup of brown sugar in it. And we just dissolved it until it kind of was no more grit to the sugar in there. We're going to put it over. The heat will kind of caramelize it into more of a candy when we roast it back up in here. So sweet and tangy on here, but the tang will be all gone by the time it cooks off. But it just helps kind of cut through that fat. Beautiful. I'm going to just pour this last little bit over it. Think about when you make a ham at Christmas and you do that final little glazing part at the end. Pop this back in here to cook off. We'll make our chimichurri sauce. We'll get a few more of our naan pockets out, and then we'll be able to take this out and cut it up and serve it. And again, we have our oven nice and hot at 425. That way it allows that top of that pork belly to crisp up, because you don't want to chew on. You want nice crispy skin on there. That's where you're going to get a lot of that flavor. And as it cooks, it kind of renders the fat down into the meat, which keeps it, again, nice and juicy. We've got our flipped over. You can see how much it's already puffed up from the first side cooking. It will get a little bit fatter from the second side cooking. We'll take it off, and then we will rub butter down it. Now let's make our chimichurri sauce, which is, we're going to do a citrus chimichurri things. I went out and I picked a whole bunch of parsley from my garden, which I'm surprised that parsley has survived. We've had several freezing nights already, and I have just so much parsley out there. So it is definitely very hardy. I'm wondering, I'm like, ooh, do you think it could survive the whole winter? And then I wouldn't have to replant it. But I doubt it. I always say that, and then it never does. So we're just getting off these really big stalks. But for chimichurri sauce, you do need about at least a cup of parsley. You could also sub in some cilantro for a little bit more of that kind of kick to it. But an all parsley one, my kids really like, because we're like halfway divided in our family about whether they like cilantro or not. Here. Just take these stalks off, and that way you just have those nice flavorful leaves. It's okay if you have a little bit, but you don't want like a whole little tree stick. And then we're gonna mince this up pretty fine. And we're gonna add in some fresh garlic. I have some apple. We're gonna do it with some lemon juice and a little bit of apple cider vinegar and some salt, oregano, black pepper. And just kind of keep it really simple but flavorful herb kind of dressing that will drizzle over the top, which will add just another bunch of robust flavors. So we'll kind of mince this up nicely. And a chimichurri sauce is great. It can go on, we're doing it on our pork belly here, but it can go over almost any meat, steak, fish. This is a great, really herb kind of flavorful base.
Can you go over what the glaze is made of?
Yes, so the glaze is really simple. We used about a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and then we used juice from two kind of, you know, cuties, those little tiny oranges, those little mandarin oranges, and then about a half a cup of brown sugar. Kind of mixed all of those together, heated them up nicely until that brown sugar grit was gone. We didn't cook it long enough to boil it, like to the sense where it got sticky, but just enough to get the sugar dissolved. And then we've been brushing it over after, you know, we let it roast, the pork belly roast for about 30 minutes at 425, and then every kind of 10-15 minutes after that, you kind of baste it. Okay, here is our beautiful chopped up parsley. Again, you don't need to be super fine, but you'll want about a cup of it, but you can see once you start chopping it up how that cup, which was, we had a little bit more, has really shrunk down. I'm gonna put it in my salad shaker. It'll just be an easier way to make our chimichurri sauce. There we go. Let me wash my hand. We're gonna get the next naan out. Beautiful. So you see that second side just is so gorgeous on here. That's why it's the presentation side. Rub it with a little bit of warm butter. You could also throw on parsley, some garlic, salt, or whatnot, herbs on here if you wanted to. But we're gonna keep ours simple. And we're still getting a little bit of parsley in here because I guess I didn't wash it all the way off, but that's a-okay. You can actually put parsley in your dough, and so you'll have nice little flakes, like minced up garlic and parsley, and it's just delicious. We're gonna roll it out nice and thin. I feel like I've pulled up my sleeves 100 times today. And again, you don't need to go as thin as what you would do with a tortilla, but fairly thin, you know, think pie crust level, because if you leave it too fat, it's going to double in thickness. So if it is too fat, then you're gonna have like a really chunky naan that takes longer to cook. Okay, looks pretty big. Pull it up. Again, on our nice hot skillet, we'll let it cook. We'll flip it over. Let's finish up this chimichurri sauce. We're gonna use fresh garlic. Fresh garlic is key to this. Garlic is just not gonna be the right flavor. It's too acidic for it, and when you're already using a lot of, you know, vinegar and citrus in here, you don't want to add to that. So fresh garlic is more mellow and will be lovely for this. You're gonna want about, you know, a tablespoon of it minced up to bring out those flavors. We'll add it in there, and then we'll get some herbs. Our vinegar oil, will shake it up, and it will be all ready to pour over our little flat or pork belly, kind of flatbready, non-pocket things. Don't have a name for it yet. Oh, in our glaze, I forgot to mention, we did add about a teaspoon of liquid smoke because I wanted a nice smoky flavor. I was like, I remember I added something else, but I see it now, my liquid smoke. But that is optional, but I kind of wanted it as if it was a smoked pork belly on there on top of it. Just gives a bit more flavor. Okay, we've got our garlic minced up here, so I'm going to add it into good about tablespoon or so. And then you can use fresh oregano or dried oregano. I'm going to use some dried because I have it. We're going to do about a teaspoon or so. We're going to use about a half a teaspoon of black pepper. You could use a little bit of red pepper or some red pepper flakes if you like it a little bit more heat. I do not, so I like to keep it more mild. We're going to do about a teaspoon or so of garlic salt. Maybe a little bit more, a teaspoon and a half. I'm going to add the juice from a lemon in here. And if you want to do a more mild one, you don't want straight up lemon, you could do an orange juice, and like a juice from an orange, a fresh orange would work well. It would just not be quite as tangy. And then we're going to do a smidge of vinegar, about, I'm going to do about a half a tablespoon. And then you're going to use olive oil, and we're going to fill it up and kind of cover it with our olive oil on there. It's going to be probably close to about a fourth of a cup, maybe a little bit more. You don't need so much like a vinaigrette, but you want a good amount. And then I'm just going to use my juicer, and we're going to just kind of smash it down in here. If you have a muddler, you could do a muddler, or you can even do this in a mortar pestle to really kind of bring out some of those flavors. You don't want to like blend it, because that's going to give you too strong of the flavors, but more just kind of mashed into it. And then let me give it a quick taste. Perfect. And then we'll give it a good shake. And that will be our little chimichurri sauce that we'll pour over the top of it. And you don't put too much oil or too much liquid in it, because you don't want it super thin, because you want to be able to scoop it over and get all of those herby flavors on it. Okay, let's go grab our pork belly out of the oven. That way we can get ready to slice it up, and then we can prep our first little one for you guys. It smells fantastic. Beautiful. Again, always be careful with this, because you have all of that kind of rendered off fat. But it smells amazing. Go. Put it right there. And then we're gonna let it just sit for, a few minutes while I kind of get it organized. You don't want to cut into it right away, because it's just like with all hot meats. If you cut into it right away, you're gonna get just all the juices will leak out. I'm gonna wipe my cutting board off so I can cut on here, so I don't get any extra herbs or whatnot on it. And then let me go get my big fork. We'll transfer it that way. It'll be a little bit easier. Give it a little bit of a drainage here. Otherwise you might be cleaning up a lot of mess. Here we go. Looks so good. I'm gonna move this tray out of here because I know if I leave it here, I will touch it.
And at what temperature and about how long?
So I cooked it at about at 425 for about an hour now. Minimum is 1 hour on there, especially if you're gonna leave it in the big cut. Now, if you cut it into strips and you have it, that will cook a lot faster. But the time is not necessarily needed to cook the meat. It's to render the fat down so you don't have a big piece of chewy fat. So I think that's the most important part about it. Let me see, let me grab my knife over here and just rinse off that garlic off of it. And this is actually, pork belly is one of those things where you can actually cook it in advance, wrap it up, and then you just the next day you kind of heat it up to kind of render it down. So it's one of those ones that can be cooked in advance for it. Okay, we're gonna get our naan off. We'll butter this one up, and then we'll be almost ready to cut up. Get this next one cooking, and then we'll plate up our things. So I'm gonna again rub it with some of our butter here. That helps keep it nice and malleable to work with when we go to fold it. We'll roll out, let's get our next ones out. Then we are going to cut our pork belly and build our sandwich, which again is going to be delicious. Let's look at this guy. You start a little bit of it on here. And I always just, you know, you could always roll out all of your naan at one time, but I have found that it's easier to roll one out at a time. It allows your skillet to warm up. And if you roll it out too soon, it actually kind of stretches back and expands back in, or contracts, I should say. It doesn't expand, it contracts. So I like to roll it out kind of fresh and then get it on that griddle. You can also do it if you have a pizza oven, you can cook it in the pizza oven. You can also do it in the oven on high temperature on like a pizza stone where you kind of bake it really fast. But I, again, prefer the skillet or the pizza oven the best versus like an actual oven. Okay. Get this guy on here. Let him start to cook up. Let's get this guy cut and ready. Okay. Make sure I have a good base. Beautiful. You can kind of see just how tender that part is on the bottom there. And you got this nice crispy skin coming off as we cut. You kind of hear it crunch through too. So I'm just gonna cut off 2 of them to build our first ones. And then I'm not going to leave it whole. I'm gonna actually cut it into kind of bite-sized pieces just to make it a little bit more edible for our kids. That's actually how it was served at Dollywood as well. I think our dogs are smelling the pork belly as well. So I do not recommend you give dogs pork belly. I do not think it would agree with them. You can just hear that nice crunch on that top skin. Okay, beautiful. And then look at that, just crispy, crunchy skin on there. And I'm gonna steal a little piece because of course the chef has to try it. Perfect. Let's serve up our dinner. Okay, let's get ourselves, bring it over here. But we're gonna start with our pillowy soft naan. Do you see how like soft and fluffy it is? We're gonna lay it down there. And then I'm gonna start with a little bed of our carrot and apple and arugula slaw that we made using just a kind of a light slaw base using mayo, sugar, apple cider vinegar, diced up apples on here. We're going to place some chunks of our crispy pork belly on here. And then I'm gonna get this nice big piece of that crispy skin over the top on there. So it will be absolutely delicious. And then definitely not the last part, the least part, but the most delicious part, we are going to drizzle it with a little bit of our homemade chimichurri sauce that is filled with parsley, garlic, oregano, black pepper, and salt. So those flavors are all gonna pair through. But this pork belly, I'm gonna just grab a piece right here and show you. You've got this crispy skin. It's got a nice little sweetness to it because of that glaze that we put on it. And I'm gonna eat it really slowly in front of the camera, guy. It's your happy spot. Delicious. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for we got a little tasty nibble there. You can just search for what we made. So we've got our pork belly and naan kind of sandwiches here, and you can watch and cook along with us again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets. I've got my hex cut pans, my bowls, my knives, my cutting boards, all the different things I use in the kitchen I have in here for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.